My husband cheated on me after his family orchestrated our poverty to test my loyalty, so I threw him out and never looked back. A year later, he's at my door asking if he can sleep on my couch. When I first met my husband's family, I thought they were breaking the cruel in-law stereotype. They were kind, and his mom even baked me an apple tart since she knew it was my favorite. They all followed me on Instagram and made sure to invite me to every family tradition they had. But after the engagement party, something shifted. I noticed his mom stopped liking my posts on Instagram. His dad even unfollowed me. I should have seen that as my first sign to leave. But I was lying in bed on his chest when I noticed, and he reassured me that his family just acted strangely sometimes, and they were overprotective of him since he was the youngest out of him and his sister. Well, I didn't want my thoughts to spiral, so I took his word for it. But over the next few weeks, strange things happened. Not to do with his family, but to do with our finances. In one single week, I was suddenly fired from my job. Our landlord raised the rent by 3.4%, the highest allowed amount, and my husband's bank account was hacked into. Like, how does that even happen? It felt like an attack or something. So much so that there was a week-long period where I was crying myself to sleep every night, worried about our next paycheck. My husband kept checking if I wanted him to ask his parents for money, because they were rich. Like old money Ralph Lauren, weekends at the golf course, 1950s expensive car collection rich. And if there was one thing I knew about the top 1%, is that they were sick of people asking them for money. So I refused. The job market was so bad that I went from being a paralegal at a very prestigious law firm to a receptionist at a local dentist office. Meanwhile, my husband wasn't able to take up more hours at work. So for a while, we lived like college kids. Ramen noodles twice a day, didn't buy anything unnecessary, and even canceled our gym and Netflix subscription. It was hard not to feel like we were going backwards instead of forwards, but every cell in my body wanted to marry this man. Fast forward to the day of the wedding. We had already paid for everything back when we were still raking in $200,000 a year, so everything was beautiful. I felt like a Disney princess teehee, but our newfound poor lifestyle was so awful that I had completely forgotten about his parents low-key hating my guts. Luckily, his parents made sure to remind me. It's so brave of you to wear something that was obviously made for someone much skinnier, was the first thing his mom said to me, referring to my wedding dress. I'm glad you're taking pride in being our son's first wife, his dad chimed in. You'll be good practice for when the real one comes in. Their words stung, especially since it was so different from the beginning. But I didn't even care about what had changed, because my mind was focused on paying the bills and figuring out stuff for the future. We've been married for over a year now. I finally got an internship that is supposed to lead to a long-term law career, but it means that my husband and I had to live paycheck to paycheck because we spent all our savings. Meanwhile, the harassment from his parents got even worse. Yay! On our 1-year anniversary, his mom sent me dozens of photos of other girls, asking why I couldn't be as pretty as them. His dad called and asked if I was sure he wasn't cheating on me, and when I answered with yes, he just sighed. The only person who wasn't texting me with BS was his older sister, who seemed to be the black sheep of the family, mainly because she was the only one who didn't switch up. And she still followed me on Instagram too, but I figured that we were going to have kids together one day, so I still kept in contact with them. So for Thanksgiving, we went over to his family's house for dinner. As soon as they opened the door, I regretted it, because as soon as my husband stepped inside, my mother-in-law closed the door on my face. It wasn't until his older sister, Sarah, opened it that I finally went inside. His parents ignored me the whole time, and I guess my husband didn't notice or something because he didn't even check to see if I was doing okay. For dinner, I cooked a side of classic shepherd's pie, using a recipe from my late dad. As soon as his mom tried it, her face contorted like she had bitten into a lemon. She then spit it back out onto the table. My face flushed with embarrassment. I threw it out before running outside and bursting into tears. But then I heard footsteps behind me. It wasn't my husband. It was his sister. She finally confessed. She explained that the entire thing was a test. Apparently, my husband had told his entire family that I was a freeloading bitch who never pulled her weight. And in response, they told him he had to test me to see if I would stick it through the hard times. And because my husband didn't want to be proven wrong, now he was making my life hell to drive me out. She gave me a hug and told me she was sorry, and I should get out of her family while I still can. I hugged her back, but told her I would stay, because I was about to show my husband what people mean when they say to be careful what you wish for. I drove home alone that night, the November air biting through my thin coat. My husband stayed at his parents' house. He texted me saying he needed space to think. I didn't even respond. I just sat in our tiny apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling we couldn't afford to fix, and started planning. The next morning, I called my best friend Victoria. She's the kind of girl who turns heads everywhere she goes. Long legs, perfect hair, the whole package. She had that effortless beauty that made other women either hate her or want to be her best friend. I told her everything sister had revealed. She was furious. She immediately offered to help however she could. I asked her to come over for coffee next week when my husband would be home, just to see what would happen. Victoria showed up wearing this tight dress and heels. Her perfume filled our small apartment with notes of jasmine and vanilla. My husband's eyes practically popped out of his head. She pretended not to notice him at first, focusing entirely on me, asking about my internship and how I was handling the long hours. Then she asked if he could help her move some boxes from her car. He jumped up so fast he knocked over his coffee, the dark liquid spreading across our secondhand coffee table like an oil spill. I watched from the kitchen window as they talked by her car. She was laughing at everything he said, touching his arm, playing with her hair. He was eating it up like a starving man at a buffet. When they came back inside, he offered to help her anytime she needed. She thanked him and left her number on our counter, just in case. That night my husband was different. He kept checking his phone, smiling at texts. When I asked who he was talking to, he said it was just work stuff, but I saw Victoria's name pop up on his screen when he thought I wasn't looking. She was sending me screenshots of their conversation at the same time. He was already complaining about me, saying I was boring, that I never wanted to do anything fun anymore, that I was always stressed about money. Victoria played along perfectly. She told him he deserved someone who appreciated him, someone who could match his energy, someone who understood what it meant to enjoy life. Within a week, they were meeting for coffee. He told me he was working late, but Victoria sent me photos of them at Starbucks. He was leaning in close, laughing, looking at her like she was the most interesting person in the world, the same way he used to look at me before all of this started. It hurt more than I expected, seeing those stolen glances and secret smiles, but I kept reminding myself this was all part of the plan, that he had orchestrated my misery first. His parents started acting nicer to me suddenly. His mom called to invite me to lunch, just the two of us. I went because I was curious. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind with cloth napkins and water served in crystal glasses. She spent the whole meal talking about how hard marriage was, how sometimes people grow apart, how there was no shame in admitting when something wasn't working. She even offered to help me find a new apartment, sliding a business card across the table for a realtor friend of hers. I smiled and nodded, told her I appreciated her concern, but inside I was seething. The pieces were falling into place exactly as I'd hoped. My husband started going to the gym again, said he needed to get back in shape, but I knew it was for Victoria. He bought new cologne, started caring about his clothes, even got a haircut that cost more than our weekly grocery budget. I pretended not to notice, just kept going to my internship every day, coming home exhausted, making dinner from whatever was on sale that week. Victoria was brilliant at this. She'd text him just enough to keep him hooked, but not enough to seem desperate. She'd cancel plans sometimes, make him work for her attention, and he fell for it completely. Started buying her little gifts. Nothing too expensive since we were broke, but I'd find receipts for coffee, flowers, chocolate, things he hadn't bought me in over a year. Sister called me one night while my husband was at the gym. She wanted to check on me, said she felt terrible about everything. I told her I was handling it. She warned me to be careful, said her parents could be vicious when they wanted something, that they destroyed her college boyfriend's reputation when they decided he wasn't good enough for her, made sure he couldn't get into any grad school in the state. I thanked her for the warning, but told her I had it under control. The next week, things escalated. My husband started staying out later, coming home smelling like Victoria's perfume. He'd shower immediately, thinking I wouldn't notice, but I noticed everything. The way he smiled at his phone, the way he'd quickly close his laptop when I walked in, the credit card charges at restaurants we couldn't afford. He was getting sloppy, or maybe he just didn't care if I found out anymore. His mom started showing up at our apartment unannounced. She criticized everything, the way I decorated, the food in our fridge, my appearance. One time she brought a bag of expensive clothes, said they were from her closet clean out, but they were all 2 sizes too small. She knew they wouldn't fit, just wanted to remind me that I wasn't thin enough for her son. I thanked her politely and donated them the next day. Victoria recorded everything, every flirty text, every inappropriate comment, every time he badgered badmouthed me. She was building a file that would destroy him, but we needed him to cross that final line, to actually cheat, not just emotional stuff, something undeniable. So she suggested they meet at her place to watch a movie, just as friends, of course. He agreed immediately. That night, I told him I was going to a study group for my internship. He barely looked up from his phone when I left. I drove to Victoria's apartment complex and parked where I could see her door. Watched him arrive with a bottle of wine. Saw him check his hair in the car mirror before going in. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, from anticipation. This was it. Victoria had cameras set up in her living room. Nothing creepy. Just for security, she'd tell him if he asked. But he didn't ask. He was too busy trying to impress her. They drank wine, sat closer and closer on the couch. He told her how unhappy he was, how I'd changed, how I wasn't fun anymore, how his parents never liked me anyway. Victoria sympathized, touched his hand, leaned in when he talked, and then he kissed her. She let it happen for about 10 seconds, long enough for the cameras to catch everything. Then she pulled away, told him this was wrong, that he was married, that she couldn't do this to me. He tried to convince her, said his marriage was basically over anyway, that I probably wouldn't even care, that his parents would help him with the divorce. Victoria recorded all of it on her phone. Every pathetic excuse, every lie about me. She kicked him out gently, said she needed time to think. He left looking defeated but hopeful, like maybe she'd change her mind. I was already home when he got back, pretending to study. He kissed my forehead and said he was tired, went straight to bed. I stayed up looking at the videos Victoria had sent, watching my husband betray me in high definition. It should have hurt more, but all I felt was satisfaction. The next morning, I made his favorite breakfast, eggs over easy, crispy bacon, fresh orange juice. He was suspicious but pleased, kept checking his phone for messages from Victoria. She was ignoring him now, part of the plan. Make him desperate, make him sloppy. He left for work distracted, didn't even say goodbye properly. I spent the day preparing, printed out all the text messages, downloaded all the videos, organized everything chronologically. Then I called sister, asked if she wanted to get coffee. She met me at a small cafe near my internship. I showed her everything. Her face went pale, then red, then furious. She said she knew her brother was an idiot, but she didn't think he was this cruel. I told her what I planned to do next. She nodded, said she'd support me however she could. That evening, I confronted my husband, calmly. No screaming, no crying. Just laid out all the evidence on our kitchen table. His face went through so many emotions. Shock, denial, anger, fear, finally, panic. He tried to explain. Said it meant nothing, that Victoria came on to him, that he was confused, that his parents had been pressuring him. I just sat there, sipping my tea, letting him dig his own grave deeper and deeper. Then I said the word he was dreading, divorce. He actually fell to his knees, started begging, said his parents would tell him that this would ruin everything, that they'd cut him off, that he'd have nothing. I told him that wasn't my problem anymore. He grabbed my hands, promised to change, to go to counseling, to cut off contact with his parents, to be the husband I deserved. I pulled my hands away and walked to the bedroom, locked the door, let him sob in the kitchen. His parents called within an hour, his mom screaming, his dad threatening. They said I was a gold digger, that I'd never get a penny, that they'd make sure I regretted this, that they had lawyers who would destroy me. I hung up and blocked their numbers, but they kept finding ways to contact me, through email, through my work, through mutual friends. The messages got nastier, more threatening. They said they'd make sure I never worked in law again, that they'd ruin my reputation, that no one would believe a poor nobody over their precious son. But they didn't count on Victoria being such a good record keeper. She had screenshots of their son admitting his parents never liked me, videos of him saying they wanted him to test me, proof that this whole thing was orchestrated. Their threats started to sound hollow when faced with evidence of their own manipulation. My lawyer, a friend from my internship, said we had a solid case, especially with sister willing to testify about her family's pattern of behavior. The divorce negotiations were brutal. His parents hired a team of expensive lawyers. They tried everything, said I was having an affair, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd hidden assets, but every accusation fell apart when examined. Meanwhile, Victoria kept feeding me information. My husband was still texting her, still trying to win her over, still saying horrible things about me. Every message strengthened my case. They tried to buy me off, offered me $50,000 to go away quietly, to sign an NDA, to pretend none of this happened. I laughed, told them I wanted half of everything, including spousal support. They said I was delusional, that I'd never see a dime. But my lawyer reminded them about the evidence, about how this would look in court. A rich family destroying their daughter-in-law's career to test her loyalty. The media would eat it up. Suddenly, they were more willing to negotiate. We settled for a lot more than $50,000, enough to pay off my student loans, enough to get a decent apartment, enough to actually breathe for the first time in over a year. My husband looked broken at the final meeting. His parents flanked him like bodyguards, glaring at me, but I just smiled, signed the papers, walked out with my head high. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, my ex was texting me, said he made a mistake, that his parents had cut him off, that Victoria wouldn't return his calls, that he had nothing left. I didn't respond at first, let him stew in his own misery, but then he showed up at my new apartment, looking pathetic, thin, unshaven, his expensive clothes wrinkled and stained. He begged me to take him back, said he'd do anything, that he realized I was the only one who ever really loved him, that his parents were toxic, that he should have stood up for me. I let him talk, let him cry, then I made him an offer. He could stay with me, but things would be different. He'd have to earn his keep, follow my rules, prove he changed. He agreed immediately, desperation making him blind to the trap. I moved him into my spare room, a tiny space barely big enough for a twin bed, gave him a list of chores, cooking, cleaning, laundry, everything I'd done when we were married. He did it all without complaint at first, grateful just to have a roof over his head. His parents had completely disowned him, wouldn't even take his calls, said he was dead to them. The golden boy had fallen hard. I made sure he experienced everything I had, criticized his cooking, said the pasta was overcooked, the chicken was dry, the vegetables were mushy, compared him to other men constantly, mentioned how my coworker Daniel was so successful, how my neighbor Frank was so handy around the house, how my trainer Jason was in such great shape, watched his confidence crumble day by day. He got a job at a call center, minimum wage, long hours, angry customers. He'd come home exhausted and still have to make dinner. I'd eat in front of the TV, barely acknowledge his presence. Sometimes I'd have friends over, make him serve us drinks, introduce him as my roommate, never as my ex-husband. The shame in his eyes was delicious. Sister started coming over more often. We'd become close through all of this. She'd never had a real friend in her family. They'd isolated her just like they'd tried to isolate me. We'd spend hours talking about growing up in that toxic environment, how her parents had controlled every aspect of her life, how they'd sabotaged her relationships, how they'd kept her dependent on their money. She was finally seeing a therapist, working through decades of manipulation. Sister had recently gained control of her trust fund. Her grandmother had set it up to transfer to her at 30, and her parents could no longer block it. My ex hated when sister visited. She'd ignore him completely, act like he wasn't even there. Sometimes she'd talk about him like he wasn't in the room. Remember when he wet his pants at Jeffrey's birthday party? Remember when he cried because Amy wouldn't dance with him at prom? Remember when he failed his driving test 3 times? Small humiliations that added up, death by 1,000 cuts. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates, dinners, movies. I'd make my ex help me get ready, ask his opinion on outfits, make him zip up dresses, watch him die inside as I left for dates with other men. He never said anything, never complained, just did what he was told. The fight had gone out of him completely. His parents had raised a man who couldn't function without someone telling him what to do. Now that someone was me. The call center fired him after 3 months, said he wasn't meeting quotas. He came home in tears, begged me not to kick him out. I told him he had 1 week to find something else. He applied everywhere, fast food, retail, warehouses, finally got hired at a grocery store, night shift, stocking shelves. He'd leave for work when I was going to bed, come home when I was leaving for my job. We barely saw each other, which was fine by me. His health started declining. The stress, the poor diet, the lack of sleep. He developed dark circles under his eyes, lost weight, started looking older than his years. Nothing like the confident man I'd married. His parents had created a monster, then abandoned him when he'd served his purpose. Now he was my monster, and I was making sure he knew exactly how it felt to be powerless. Sister and I grew closer. She started confiding more about her childhood, the pressure, the expectations, the constant criticism, how her parents had made her feel worthless unless she was perfect, how they'd threatened to cut her off every time she disappointed them, how they'd used money to control every decision. She'd never been allowed to be herself, always always had to be the daughter they wanted, the perfect princess in their perfect family. She told me about the time she wanted to study art. Her parents laughed, said art was for poor people, made her major in business instead. She showed me her sketches, hidden away for years. They were beautiful, raw, emotional, all the pain she'd never been allowed to express. I encouraged her to start painting again, helped her set up a small studio in her apartment, watched her come alive when she held a brush. My ex's parents tried to contact me again, through their lawyer this time, said they wanted to discuss a family matter. I agreed to meet them at their lawyer's office. Neutral ground. They looked older, tired, the perfect facade cracking. They wanted to know about their son, how he was doing, where he was living. I told them he was fine, left out the details. They offered me money for information. I declined. They threatened to sue for harassment. My lawyer shut that down quickly. The truth was, they missed their puppet. Without my ex to control, they turned on each other. Sister told me they were fighting constantly, blaming each other for how things turned out. Her mom had started drinking more. Her dad was spending more time at the office. The perfect family was falling apart, and they wanted someone to blame, someone who wasn't them. I started documenting my ex's time with me. Photos of him doing chores, videos of him apologizing, audio recordings of him admitting what he'd done, building my own file, just in case. He was too broken to notice, too focused on surviving each day, on earning enough for his share of groceries, on staying in my good graces, on not being thrown out on the street. One night he broke down completely, sobbing on the kitchen floor, saying he was sorry, that he'd ruined everything, that he'd been so stupid, that his parents had poisoned him against me, that he'd never deserved me, that he wished he could take it all back, go back to the beginning, do everything differently, be the husband I'd needed, the partner I deserved. I let him cry, didn't comfort him, just watched, waiting. When he finally stopped, I sat down across from him, told him the truth, that he'd made his choices, that he decided to test me instead of trust me, that he'd chosen his parents over his wife, that he'd tried to break me for their approval, that he'd lost everything because he'd gambled with my life, and that now he was experiencing exactly what he'd put me through: the fear, the humiliation, the powerlessness, the constant anxiety about tomorrow. I told him about every night I'd cried myself to sleep, worried about money, about our future, about why his family hated me, how I'd blamed myself, thought I wasn't good enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't rich enough, how I'd nearly broken under the pressure, how I'd considered leaving, giving up, letting them win, but how I decided to fight back instead, to show them exactly who they were messing with. He asked what would happen now, if I was going to kick him out, if this was the end. I told him he could stay for now, but that things would never go back to how they were, that he'd burned that bridge, that trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired, that he'd have to live with the consequences of his choices, just like I'd had to live with the consequences of trusting him. Sister came over the next day with news. Her parents were getting divorced. Her mom had found out about an affair. Her dad had been seeing his secretary. Classic. The perfect family exposed as a lie. She seemed relieved, said maybe now she could have a real relationship with them, or maybe not, but at least the pretense was over. The masks were off. Everyone could see who they really were. She also brought a check, said it was from her trust fund, money her grandmother had left her that she'd finally gotten access to when she turned 30. Her parents had blocked it before, but now she had full control. She wanted to share it, to help me really start over. I tried to refuse, but she insisted, said I'd saved her, shown her what her family really was, given her the courage to break free, that this was the least she could do. The check was substantial, more than substantial, life-changing. I stared at it, thought about all the ramen dinners, the canceled subscriptions, the secondhand clothes, the constant worry, the weight that had lived on my chest for 2 years, and now, just like that, it could be gone. I could breathe, really breathe. For the first time since this all started, I accepted the check, hugged sister tight. We both cried. Not sad tears, happy ones, free ones. We'd survived the worst her family could throw at us, and we'd come out stronger, bonded by shared trauma, by mutual understanding, by the knowledge that we'd never let anyone control us again, that we'd never sacrifice ourselves for someone else's approval, that we were enough, just as we were. That night, I told my ex he had to leave. His month was up. He'd experienced enough, learned his lesson, or hadn't. I didn't really care anymore. He packed his few belongings, looked around the apartment one last time, thanked me for letting him stay, for showing him mercy, even if it hadn't felt like mercy, even if it had felt like justice. He understood now, what he'd done, what he'd lost, who was really to blame. He asked if we could stay in touch. I said no. This chapter was over. We both needed to move on, build new lives, better lives, without the poison of his family, without the weight of our history. He nodded, understood, left quietly. No drama, no begging, just acceptance. The man who'd entered my apartment broken was leaving broken in a different way, but maybe, hopefully, broken in a way that could be rebuilt into something better, someone better. I used sister's money wisely, paid off debts, put some in savings, invested in my future, started therapy to deal with everything I'd been through, the trauma, the betrayal, the gaslighting, the recovery. My therapist said I was remarkably resilient, that most people would have crumbled, but I'd found a way to turn pain into power, to transform victimhood into victory, to write my own ending. Sister and I became business partners. She designed. I handled the legal side. We started small, custom pieces for friends, word of mouth, but her talent was undeniable. Soon we had real clients, a waiting list, a studio space, employees. We were building something, not just a business, a life, a future, free from toxic families, free from manipulation, free from the need for anyone's approval but our own. My ex reached out once, through a mutual friend, said he was doing better, had his own place, a steady job, was in therapy, was trying to understand how he'd become the person who could hurt someone he claimed to love. I didn't respond, but I hoped it was true, that he was growing, changing, becoming someone who wouldn't repeat his mistakes, someone who could have a healthy relationship with someone else, someone new, someone who didn't know what he was capable of. His parents never recovered. The divorce was messy, public, humiliating. Everything they tried to avoid. Their friends chose sides. Their reputation crumbled. Their perfect image shattered. They'd spent so much time and energy trying to control their children's lives. They'd forgotten to pay attention to their own. And when the facade finally fell, there was nothing underneath. Just two miserable people who'd never learned to love without conditions. Sister told me they tried to reconcile with her, separately, each parent wanting her loyalty, her money, her forgiveness. She gave them none of it, set boundaries, demanded respect, required them to earn any place in her life. They couldn't handle it, weren't equipped for a relationship they couldn't control. So they faded away, moved to different cities, started over, pretended their children didn't exist. It was easier than admitting their failures. A year later, I was promoted at the law firm. Full attorney, good salary, respect, everything I'd worked for, everything that had been taken from me, but earned this time, not given, not dependent on anyone else. Mine, my success, my achievement, my future. I celebrated with sister and Victoria, my chosen family, the people who'd stood by me, who'd helped me fight, who'd never asked me to be anything but myself. We toasted to survival, to justice, to karma, to the power of women supporting women, to the danger of underestimating someone just because they're kind, just because they're struggling, just because they seem weak. We were none of those things. Not anymore. We were forged in fire, tested by cruelty, and we'd emerged stronger, smarter, fiercer, ready for whatever came next. Sometimes I think about that girl who met her husband's family for the first time, who thought they were breaking the in-law stereotype, who trusted, who hoped, who believed in love conquering all. I want to warn her, tell her to run, to see the signs, to protect herself, but I can't, because she needed to go through this, to learn, to grow, to become who I am now, someone who knows her worth, who sets boundaries, who doesn't accept less than she deserves. The betting pool his family had started was never officially resolved, but I knew who won. I did. Not by staying married, not by proving them wrong about my commitment, but by proving them wrong about my strength, my resilience, my ability to survive their worst and come out better. They'd bet on my breaking point, but they'd underestimated one crucial thing. Sometimes the person who breaks is the one who learns how to rebuild, stronger, better, unbreakable. I watched my ex walk out that door and felt nothing, just empty. Good empty though, like when you finally clean out that junk drawer that's been bothering you for years. Sister came over the next morning with coffee and donuts. We sat on my couch and didn't even mention him, just talked about our business plans. She had this idea for a whole collection inspired by toxic families. Dark, but beautiful. I loved it. The law firm was keeping me busy, 60-hour weeks sometimes, but I didn't mind. I was learning so much. My supervisor Daniel was this older guy who'd been practicing for 30 years. He took me under his wing, taught me tricks they don't teach in school, how to read people, how to spot lies, how to build cases that were bulletproof. I soaked it all up like a sponge. My ex's parents tried one more power play. They contacted my employer, told them I was unstable, that I'd manipulated their son, that I couldn't be trusted with clients. My boss called me into his office. I thought I was done, but he just laughed, showed me the email, said anyone who wrote that desperately was clearly projecting, told me to keep doing what I was doing, that I had a bright future ahead. Sister's art was taking off. We got our first big commission. Some tech executive wanted a piece for his office, $20,000. We celebrated with champagne that actually had bubbles, not the flat stuff from the corner store. Real champagne. We were both crying and laughing, remembering where we'd come from, how her parents had said art was worthless, how they'd been so wrong about everything. I ran into my ex at the grocery store 3 months later. He was working register, looked healthier, cleaner, still worn down but not broken anymore. He saw me and froze. I could have gone to another line, but I didn't. Loaded my stuff on the belt, organic vegetables, good cheese, the expensive coffee I'd always wanted to try. He rang it all up without meeting my eyes. When he told me the total, his voice cracked a little. I paid and started to leave, then turned back, told him I was glad he was doing better. He nodded, said therapy was helping, that he was sorry, really sorry, for everything. I said I knew, then I left. Didn't look back, didn't need to. That chapter was closed, sealed, done. Time to write new ones, better ones where I was the hero of my own story. Sister and I incorporated our business officially, Greer and Associates Art Studio. She wanted my name first, but I insisted on hers. It was her talent driving everything. I was just handling contracts and taxes and boring stuff, but she said we were equal partners, that she couldn't do it without me, that I'd saved her as much as she'd saved me. We were both crying again, happy tears becoming our thing. The studio space we rented was perfect. High ceilings, great light, room to grow. We spent a weekend painting the walls ourselves, getting covered in paint, ordering pizza, blasting music. It felt like being in college again, except better, because we were building something real, something ours, something no one could take away. My ex's mom showed up at the studio one day, alone, looking older, sadder, designer clothes hanging loose on her frame. She wanted to commission a piece. I started to say no, but Sister stopped me, took the meeting, listened to her describe what she wanted, a portrait of her family from before, when they were happy, if they'd ever really been happy. Sister quoted her triple our normal rate. She paid without blinking. We accepted the commission, but Sister struggled with it. She couldn't paint that lie. Instead, she created something else, a shattered mirror installation, each fragment reflecting a different version of truth, beautiful but broken, honest in its destruction. We delivered it with a professional invoice. She never complained, never asked for her money back. Maybe she understood. Maybe she finally saw what they'd all become. Victoria started dating someone new, a teacher named John, sweet, genuine, nothing like the guys she usually went for. She brought him to dinner one night. He was clearly crazy about her. Looked at her like she hung the moon. She seemed different too, softer, less guarded, like she could finally let someone see the real her, not the perfect facade she'd worn like armor. I was deposing a witness when I realized something. I was good at this, really good. The senior partners were starting to notice, giving me bigger cases, more responsibility. Daniel said I had instincts you couldn't teach, that I could read people, see through their masks. I wondered if I should thank my ex's family for that, for teaching me to spot manipulation, to see agendas, to never take anything at face value. Sister's therapist encouraged her to write a letter to her parents, not to send, just to get it all out. She showed it to me after, 20 pages of pain, of anger, of disappointment, of grief for the family she never really had. We burned it together in my sink, watched all those words turn to ash, then ordered Chinese food and watched bad reality TV. Sometimes healing looked like that, small moments, shared silence, understanding without words. The business kept growing. We hired our first employee, then our second. Young artists who reminded us of ourselves, talented but unsure. We made sure to pay them fairly, to respect their ideas, to create the environment we'd both craved, supportive, honest, free from manipulation, a place where people could just create, just be, just exist without constantly proving their worth. My ex sent a letter to the studio. No return address, but I recognized his handwriting. Inside was a check, not huge, but substantial for someone making minimum wage. A note said it was partial repayment for what I'd spent supporting him, that he'd send more when he could, that he didn't expect forgiveness, just wanted to make things right, whatever that meant now. I cashed the check, donated the money to a women's shelter, felt like the right thing to do. Sister met someone at a gallery opening, Susan, a curator with wild red hair and the loudest laugh I'd ever heard. Sister was immediately smitten, spent the whole night talking to her about art and life and everything in between. They exchanged numbers, started texting constantly. Sister would smile at her phone like a teenager. It was beautiful watching her learn to trust again, to open up, to believe she deserved love. The law firm offered me a promotion, junior partner track. It meant more hours, more stress, more responsibility, but also more money, more security, more proof that I'd made it, that I'd survived, that I'd built something from the ashes of my old life. I accepted immediately, called Sister from the parking lot. We screamed together over the phone, made plans to celebrate properly. My ex's dad died suddenly, heart attack at his desk, working late as always. Sister found out from a cousin, debated going to the funeral, decided against it, said she'd mourned that relationship years ago. The man in the casket wasn't her father, just someone who'd shared DNA, who'd failed at the one job that mattered, being a parent, being human, being kind. His mom fell apart after, lost the house, the cars, the status, everything she'd valued more than her children. She moved to a small apartment, started working retail. Sister ran into her once, said she looked hollow, like all the cruelty had finally eaten her from the inside out, left nothing but a shell, a cautionary tale and designer shoes she could no longer afford. I was in court when I saw him again, my ex, sitting in the gallery, watching me argue a case. I almost lost my train of thought but recovered, focused on my client, on justice, on doing my job. When I won, he was gone, but there was a note on my car, just 2 words. I'm proud. I crumpled it up, threw it away. His pride meant nothing now. I was proud of myself. That was enough. Sister and Susan moved in together, fast but right. They balanced each other perfectly. Susan's chaos and Sister's order, her loud and Sister's quiet. They turned their apartment into a mini gallery. Art on every wall, color everywhere, life bursting from every corner. The opposite of the sterile perfection Sister had grown up in. It was messy and beautiful and real. We landed a huge contract. A hotel chain wanted original pieces for their lobbies, 50 pieces, our biggest order ever. We had to hire more artists, rent more space. Suddenly we weren't just a small studio. We were a real business, with employees and overhead and quarterly taxes. It was terrifying and exciting and exactly what we dreamed of. I was leaving court when someone called my name. A woman about my age, said she was dating my ex, wanted to thank me. He'd been honest about everything, his past, his mistakes, his family. She said it helped her understand him, make informed choices, set boundaries from the start. I wished her luck, meant it. Everyone deserved a chance to do better, to be better. Even him. Sister's art was in galleries now, real ones, with wine and cheese and people who actually bought things. Her pieces sold for thousands, each one a piece of her story, her pain transformed into beauty, her trauma into truth. Critics called her work raw, honest, uncomfortable. She loved that, said art should disturb, should make people think, should refuse to be polite. The studio won an award, best new business. We had to give a speech. Sister froze, public speaking was still hard for her, so I did most of the talking. Thanked our employees, our clients, each other, didn't mention the journey, the pain that birthed this success. Just focused on the future, on growth, on continuing to create space for artists to thrive. My ex's new girlfriend reached out again. They were getting married. He wanted to invite me, to show there were no hard feelings, to prove he changed. I declined politely, wished them well, but that door needed to stay closed. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, shouldn't be. The past was the past. I had no place in his future. He had no place in mine. Sister's mom tried to reconnect one last time, showed up at the studio with flowers, apologies, tears. Sister let her talk, then calmly explained her boundaries. Weekly therapy together if she wanted any relationship, no money talk, no criticism, no manipulation. Her mom agreed to everything, lasted 2 sessions, couldn't handle hearing how her actions had affected her daughter, disappeared again. Some people couldn't change change. I made full partner at 32, youngest in the firm's history. Daniel threw me a party, said I'd earned every bit of it, that I had the rare combination of intelligence and empathy, that I fought for my clients like they were family, because I knew what it felt like to be powerless, to need someone in your corner, to deserve justice and struggle to find it. The money was good now, really good. I bought a house, nothing fancy, just mine. 3 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a garden, space to breathe, to exist, to just be. Sister helped me decorate. We painted one room purple just because we could, because no one could tell us it was too bold, too much, too anything. It was perfect. It was mine. It was home. We opened a second studio location, then a third. Started a scholarship program for young artists from difficult backgrounds. Kids who'd been told art wasn't practical, wasn't valuable, wasn't for people like them. We proved them wrong. Gave them space, supplies, support, everything we'd wished we'd had. Watched them bloom, create, believe in themselves. My ex sent one final letter. Said his wife was pregnant, that he was going to be a father, that he promised to do better, to break the cycle, to love unconditionally, to support dreams instead of crushing them, to be the parent his parents never were. I actually smiled reading it. Maybe people could change. Maybe pain could teach. Maybe some stories could have happy endings. Sister married Susan in our first studio. Small ceremony, just close friends. People who'd earned their place in our lives, who'd proven themselves, who loved without conditions. I officiated, cried through the whole thing. Happy tears, always happy tears now. Watched Sister glow. Watched her believe in forever again. Watched her choose love over fear. We were cleaning the studio late one night when Sister asked if I ever regretted it. Everything that happened, how it started, how it ended. I thought about it, really thought about it, then shook my head. No regrets, just lessons, just growth, just the exact journey I needed to become who I was meant to be. Strong, successful, free. The business thrived. Our artist won awards, got gallery shows, made careers. We'd built something that mattered, that lasted, that helped people. The opposite of everything her family had represented. Creation instead of destruction. Support instead of sabotage. Love instead of control. We'd won by refusing to play their game, by writing our own rules, by choosing ourselves. I kept the betting pool text, his mom's cruel message about wagering on our marriage, framed it, hung it in my office, a reminder of where I'd been, what I'd survived, what I'd overcome. Clients sometimes asked about it. I'd just smile, tell them it was motivation, proof that the best revenge was success, that living well was the ultimate victory. 5 years later, we were everything they said we'd never be. Successful, happy, thriving, free. The family that had tried to break me was broken. The marriage they'd bet against was over, but I'd won anyway. Won my freedom, my dignity, my future, my life. They'd thought they were so smart, so powerful, so in control. They'd been wrong about everything. About me, about Sister, about what really mattered. I still see Sister every day. We built an empire on the ashes of their cruelty, turned pain into power, trauma into triumph. We saved each other, lifted each other, chose each other. The family we'd made was stronger than the one she'd been born into, because we'd chosen it, fought for it, earned it. Blood meant nothing. Love meant everything. And we had that, finally, fully, forever. The betting pool was over. The house had lost. We'd all won by walking away, by choosing ourselves, by refusing to be what they wanted, by becoming who we really were. Strong, creative, unbreakable, free. They'd bet against us, we'd bet on ourselves, and we'd been right all along.